Let's talk about hiking. Let's talk about hiking. I know I can't really do any hiking anymore, but this used to be a thing for me before I started losing the ability to walk. I'm not bitter. I used to hike quite a bit. So let's talk about this big problem on the Appalachian Trail, which I have not done. I have not done this trail. I've done lots of hikes in my life, though. But let's see what we got here.
Through YouTube, and I stumbled across a video from Wendover Productions called Too Many People Are Going Outside. That's a hot take for a title, but I'm no stranger to maybe exaggerating titles in YouTube videos, so I was like, you know what, let's take a look and see what the video has to say.
Katahdin, the towering 5,269 foot, 1,606 meter peak in the center of the park, stretches higher than any other mountain in the state, but unfurling 2,198.4 miles or 3,538 kilometers to its south is the Appalachian Trail, perhaps the most legendary long-distance hiking trail in the world.
But let's also point out that the East Coast is, they don't have a lot of earthquake activity anymore. And so their peaks and such are much more rounded. They look, I have been into the Appalachian Mountains. I just didn't go hiking there. But they look very like a Disney cartoon. They're really round, They're worn down. They've experienced a lot of erosion, and they're not as sharp and jagged as what you're gonna see in like the Rocky Mountains or the Sierra Nevada.
This context, though, legendary status is not necessarily a good thing.
It's not?
After nearly a century of limitless access along the entire stretch of the trail, Appalachian Trail thru hikers would now be capped. As of 2017, only 3,150 would be allowed to complete their trek atop Mount Katahdin.
That's not true. Now, I'm not here to just pick apart this video from a YouTuber who's much more successful than I am, but it does provide a good transition into talking about one of the biggest problems that's facing the Appalachian Trail today. It is true that Baxter State Park has a cap on the number of Appalachian Trail thru hiker permits that they're giving out. However, I really want to stress this. It's not true that, quote, only 3,150 thru hikers would be allowed to complete their trek atop Mount Katahdin. Quoting from the Appalachian Trail Conservancy's website, if the Katahdin AT hiker permit limit is reached, hikers may make a reservation for the night before they summit at another campground in Baxter State Park. Or they may leave the park and spend the night before they summit in Millinocket. They would then return to the park the following morning to climb Katahdin. In other words, all thru hikers are still going to be able to complete their trek atop Mount Katahdin. If the permit capacity is reached, the hikers after that will have to go through some additional logistics, and it will be more of a pain, but they're still going to be allowed to climb Katahdin and finish their hike. But I do think the tone of this video, and also perhaps the omission of certain facts from it, does speak to a growing paranoia about the Appalachian Trail becoming too crowded. So with that said, let's talk about it. And we're also going to...
Well, hold up. I think that there's a very important detail that you're probably leaving out, because if it's anything like what I've seen on the West Coast, it's not that you're getting permitted per se to be on the trail. It's that you're getting a permit to actually stay in certain campgrounds, right? So I think that's where you're going with this, is that you have to, the permit that you're getting is not that, not going to prevent day hikers. It's simply going to be, you are allowed to stay at certain campsites up in these higher elevation areas. Like in Yosemite, they call it a High Sierra Pass, right?
Talk about being hydrated on the Appalachian Trail, or any trail for that matter, because this video is sponsored by Drink Element. I know you guys hate me when I do these sneaky sponsor segues, but I really do think you should check out Drink Element. It's really, really important that you stay hydrated when you're sweating a lot, when you're working hard on the trail, and it's not enough just to drink water. You need to make sure that you're replacing your electrolytes, because if you don't do that, you're going to get fatigued, your muscles are going to cramp up. It's just not a good thing. Why should you do that? You might be asking. Well, the truth is because Drink Element tastes the best. It tastes way better than any crap you're gonna find at Walmart. It tastes way better than any other electrolyte drink mix I've ever had. And not only does it taste good, but it's also really good for you. So many other electrolyte drink mixes are full of sugar and full of crap. Drink Element has no sugar in it. All it has is the electrolytes that you need to stay safe and hydrated on the trail. Let's talk about grapefruit salt, dude. This new flavor that they have, it is...
For those of you looking for electrolyte drinks, you have to really take a look at, especially if you have high blood pressure like I do, you have to take a look at the sodium content, because that's one of the ways that they try and keep you hydrated.
Is the best flavor from them I've ever had. So I would highly recommend you go to drinkelement.com/Kyle Hates Hiking. That's drinklmnt.com/Kyle Hates Hiking. Go order some of this grapefruit salt. And when you do that through the link that I just mentioned there, you're going to have a sample pack of 8 different flavors they make thrown in with your order for no extra cost. And that's a great deal because Drink Element has so many amazing flavors that nobody else in the electrolyte drink mix game is doing. They have things like mango, chili, lemon, habanero, chocolate salt, or even an unflavored version if you don't want a flavor for some reason. They got it. They definitely do have the more standard flavors, but they just have these really cool ones they're just so unique as well. And so I think you guys should get to try them. One more time, drinklmnt.com/Kyle Hates Hiking. Go make an order. Go get a free sample pack thrown in. You'll be able to try all the flavors. Drink Element is amazing. So thank you so much to them for sponsoring this video and so many of my videos in the past. So is the Appalachian Trail overcrowded? I think a lot of people would answer that question with a yes, but the truth is there's a little bit more to it than that. For the vast majority of the year, on the vast majority of the trail, hardly anybody is going to be out there. If you go hike in the middle of the 100-mile wilderness in December, you're probably not going to see anybody. Now, I don't necessarily recommend you do that. It's really only specific spots and specific times of the year that are seeing these huge crowds.
I mean, given the amount of videos y'all do about Sasquatches and shit being on the trail and, you know, weird happenings when people are by themselves, isn't that okay? Isn't it, like, wouldn't you rather have, like, a lot of people around you? Like, I don't see this as a problem, especially as if the people around you are being respectful to the trail, right? Like, let me give you an example. Hold on. This is a picture of my family who summited Half Dome. And if you look up Half Dome there, that is all people. It's all people. That's that's so insane, you guys. That is people climbing Half Dome, and basically they put up like these 2 cables or something on either side, and you use those to kind of walk up at a vertical position. You're just like trying to get up, and you have to hold on to the side when people are passing you who are coming down. It's a very chaotic and confusing situation in which these people are trying to summit Half Dome. Very dangerous, but somehow they make it work, right? But you can see it looks like a trail of ants. It looks like a trail of ants because it's so crowded. All right, let's get back to this.
do that, it's really only specific spots and specific times of the year that are seeing these huge crowds. If you're starting a through hike of the Appalachian Trail in March down at Springer Mountain, that first part of the trail, it's going to be crowded. If you're hiking in the middle of what they call the bubble, which is the largest group of through hikers as it moves north along the trail, yeah, it's probably going to be pretty damn crowded. And if you visit popular spots along the trail at pretty much any point during the summer, like Max Patch or Mount Washington or McAfee Knob, you're not only going to see lots of through hikers, but you're also going to see way more just day use and weekend section hikers.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion, and let's be honest, my opinion doesn't mean shit. So what does the Appalachian Trail Conservancy have to say about overcrowding on the AT? Is crowding a problem? The AT offers hundreds of day hikes and overnight sites over its 2,190-mile length. The ATC has designed a task force to prepare for larger numbers of hikers by promoting leave no trace practices, dispersing start dates of through hikers through a voluntary through hiker registration system. The task force has...
So what he's talking about is that technically any good camper, any good hiker is going to leave the trail, leave your campsite better than you found it, meaning that you spend some time looking for trash and cleaning it up, right? And you buy firewood. You don't just like bring an axe into the forest and start cutting things down, because now you're taking away from the ecosystem. We'll get into erosion here in a minute too.
Has also been promoting 2 new patterns of hiking that better disperse hikers and reduce impacts. One is promoting alternative through hike itineraries that encourage through hikers to start their hikes mid-trail. Another is introducing the 14-State Challenge, which promotes enjoyment of the diverse landscapes of the AT by day hiking. Hiker education is of the utmost importance for keeping the trail in pristine condition. So clearly the ATC is taking this issue seriously, but downsides. Obviously, there's got to be some downsides to all this increase in use among through hikers. Probably the most obvious downside is the environmental impact. Now, I am no environmental expert. I'm not going to even try to pretend that I am, but I think it goes without saying that more foot traffic on the Appalachian Trail opens up the possibility for more damage to the environment, more people setting up campsites and killing some of the vegetation there, impacting the environment. More people potentially going off trail or, walking around mud pits and kind of widening the trail. Not to mention more people not following leave no trace potentially and, going off and going to the bathroom and not covering it up or leaving trash. People starting fires, making new fire pits,
Yeah, when you're doing a long trail, you gotta go off the trail and pee. Peeing, I don't think you really have to cover up too much, but like if you have to go number 2, let's be real, you gotta cover that shit up, literally.
Just violating all sorts of leave no trace principles. Another downside is that when there's more people on the trail, it kind of does take away from everybody's wilderness experience. Sometimes when there's a ton of people on a hiking trail or at a particular campsite, it kind of puts a damper on things. Like you go out to the trail, you want to be alone in nature, or at the very least, you don't want to be dealing with hordes of people. But in some spots on the Appalachian Trail, that can just happen. You can roll up to a campsite and there's hardly any space there. What little space there is left is going to be right next to other people. It definitely doesn't feel like a wilderness experience. I think it's somewhat valid to complain about it sometimes, although I'm only saying that because I've been caught on camera complaining about this. Luke, roll a clip.
It's been a while since I've complained about being around too many hikers. We are in a massive bubble of hikers right now. Everybody skipped up to Cascade Locks for trail days, and then instead of going back, they just said, screw it. Getting a town meal today, if we can fight off the thousands of hikers.
Now, in that clip, I wasn't on the AT, I was on the Pacific Crest Trail, but it is a similar thing out there too. There does get to a point where it's just like ridiculous, the amount of people trying to camp in one particular spot, it kind of sucks. However, there are actually some positives that have come out of the fact that more and more people are interested in through hiking the Appalachian Trail. I think the biggest positive of this increase in use, the more people that are through hiking means there's that many more people that are now also going to be interested and invested in making sure that the Appalachian Trail stays protected, even if that comes at the cost of some crowded campsites. Another positive, which is actually going to be a little contrary to what I just said as a negative, meeting people on an Appalachian Trail through hike is one of, if not the best part about the experience. Now, again, I do complain sometimes when I'm hiking in crowded areas, and I'm definitely not the most social hiker out there.
Hey, all you people. Hey, all you people. Hey, all you people, won't you listen to me?
But I gotta say, looking back at my Appalachian Trail through hike and my Pacific Crest Trail through hike attempt last year, the people that I met on these hikes, even though there was too many of them sometimes, at the end of the day, the people that I met on those two hikes was probably the best part of the entire experience. I mean, you guys know Flossie from the channel. I met him on my Appalachian Trail through hike in 2018, and he went on to be probably my best friend, a roommate for 2 years. I never would have made that connection if it wasn't for the Appalachian Trail. Another positive that comes out of the Appalachian Trail getting a lot of use is that this whole culture has emerged. If only a few people were through hiking each year, there wouldn't be YouTube channels, trail days, festival, what else?
I think, honestly, I think this is more of a possibility with through hiking because you're doing it for several days. Whereas all of my hiking experiences have been day use, right? So I've never applied for a permit. I've never camped in a high Sierra camp. I'm just aware of the procedures. I know what it looks like in general, but I haven't had the experience of being, part of the problem is I usually camp in Yosemite, and everything I've been told about the Yosemite experience is that once you get up to the High Sierra, you get severely harassed by bears. And so that didn't really interest me,
There just wouldn't be this whole community that has provided so much positivity to my life, certainly, and I would imagine a lot of you watching as well. And another positive of all the use the trail gets is the positives for the businesses that are located along the Appalachian Trail. There's an entire economy that revolves around through hikers coming in and out of the towns that are along the trail. Hostels and restaurants and outfitters and other services that have sprung up by catering to hikers. And if there wasn't a large number of hikers each year, sure, some of these businesses still might exist, but they definitely wouldn't exist in the way that we know them today. And lastly, more people going outside, more people enjoying the outdoors, even if that does mean the trail is crowded sometimes, I think is by far a net positive to society. It's great for your physical health. It's great for your mental health. Even though, again, hiking on a crowded trail does kind of irk me in the moment, I just need to step back and take a look at the bigger picture. And I think the bigger picture really does clearly suggest that more people being outside is a good, positive thing for everybody. The question that I haven't really hit on yet in this video is what can be done about this overcrowding problem? And there's a number of solutions that have been put forth. Again, I'm not an expert on this, so I really do want to hear your guys' comments, your thoughts, and I'm also going to share my opinion for what it's worth, not very much. So the first thing is to implement a permit system, kind of like the PCT has, to, I guess, legally limit the amount of people that can through hike each year. Personally, I don't like this idea. On my PCT through hike attempt last year, most people had a permit, but I witnessed a lot of people who definitely did not have a permit and were still hiking. I also witnessed probably even more people who did have a permit but didn't actually start on their specified date, which it clearly says if you don't start on your specified date, your permit is therefore invalid. I also only had my permit checked one time, so there's obviously just a lot of logistical problems with the permit system. The only way that you could truly enforce it is to have a large law enforcement presence on the trail, rangers. Is that really what we want on the Appalachian Trail? But I don't know. I mean, it's
Well, like I said, I mean, I don't know how y'all do it on the East Coast, but over here on the West Coast, the permits are for where you're going to stay. Like, you can be there, you can be hiking the trail and doing day use for it, but you're not gonna get a campsite, basically, right? That's what the permit's for, is where are you gonna stay, where are you gonna sleep at night, because in most of these areas, you have to be approved, like staying in an approved campsite. You can't just like pitch your tent in any meadow, because then you're going to cause damage to the ecosystem. Here's some pictures of when I went to the Yosemite Falls Trail. This is the upper Yosemite Falls Trail, not the lower one that's considered moderate. This is the more strenuous trail that I walked with a friend of mine from high school. And as you can see, we walked about halfway up the trail. To stay at the top, you would have to have a permit. But we just walked half of the trail and then went back down. But of course, the trail was very congested, right? Because there's a lot of people that do the same thing that we did, right? I don't know if this is the best picture, because I've seen some that really show how there were several paths that were that went through the meadows of Yosemite, and they had to gate off all of the meadows for quite some time for meadow restoration, because people were not following the established trails, right? And what happens is it cuts up. Meadows are wet, right? They're kind of like swamplands. And if they have all these paths cut through them, which used to be going on in the 80s when I was a kid, it cuts off the water flow that keeps it as a continuous meadow that has an ecosystem, provides, food for, like, the deer come out every morning and feed in these areas. Coyotes come out, mountain lions, bears, and this is a major area, source of food for the wildlife in the area. And the fact that they weren't protecting these meadows was a serious problem. So they ended up gating them all off and building some boardwalks, right? So that there were very clearly established paths that would protect this particular area of the park, because it was just getting out of control. Like, they were killing the meadows. They were totally killing the meadows. And that's why you got to stay on the trail, because if you're like trying to cut other new trails, you're hurting the environment. Okay, let's get back to it.
trail, rangers. Is that really what we want on the Appalachian Trail? But I don't know. I mean, it's also public land, most of the Appalachian Trail anyways. We all pay taxes on it. I don't know, I just don't like the idea of limiting people's access to public land. But that's just me. There are other solutions to this problem, some of which I highlighted at the beginning of the video when I was reading the ATC's website. A big solution is to encourage hikers to do alternative thru hikes rather than the traditional northbound thru hike. You could go southbound. You're still going to see some overcrowding when the northbound and southbound thru hikes groups pass each other, the bubbles. You could do a flip-flop hike. You could also just consider other trails if the crowds are really a big issue for you. Now, I don't think that's really a fair solution to this problem because it's kind of a cop-out telling people to go to other trails, but I do think that it's worth mentioning. There's lots of trails out there that receive almost no foot traffic, or at least compared to the AT, like the Cohos Trail in New Hampshire, the Northville Placid Trail in the Adirondacks of New York. I think another point worth mentioning, and this isn't really a solution to the problem, but you should just know what you're getting yourself into if you go on a northbound thru hike. You are going to be in large crowds of people, especially at the start. It will thin out the further north you get because most people don't actually make it all the way to Katahdin. You're just smack dab in the middle of a huge group of people, and if that's going to be a big problem for you, one last solution is just the continued education and advocacy about Leave No Trace. This is something that I probably haven't done a great job of on my channel, but it is something that the ATC has done a great job of, and something that we as individual hikers need to keep in mind. A lot of times when people are violating Leave No Trace, it's not because they're assholes. It's usually because they just don't really know. Like, somebody might hike to the top of a mountain and be in like a fragile alpine zone, and then they might go and cut down a small tree to start a fire. And for some of us hiking nerds, that's like blasphemy, right? Like, we see that, we post on Instagram and Twitter and friggin' try to cancel the person. But if you think about it from someone who's not immersed in this world at all, like their perspective, they just hike to the top of a mountain, they're camping, they want to have a campfire. How do you get wood? You get it from a tree, cut down a tree. While it is...
That's a dumbass idea. Because trees are still, like, if you're cutting down a fresh tree to try and start your campfire, the logs haven't dried out yet. And so... not only is it going to be difficult to light, but it's going to be super smoky because it's got so much moisture in it. That's a dumbass idea.
Not something that you should do. It is kind of understandable, right?
No.
So don't be the guy just going around telling people what to do, obviously. But if you ever do see a chance to educate someone, maybe it's a good idea to take that opportunity. I don't know. It's a messy situation. Do you guys think the AT is over?
You gotta let fresh logs sit out in the sun for like 6 months. That's some lame ass bullshit.
Crowded? If you do, let me know what you think the solution is in the comments, if there even is a real solution. I'd love to hear it. And of course, please subscribe to the channel. Help me get to my goal of 300,000 subscribers. That's the next one. If you haven't subscribed already, I would appreciate that. And yeah, happy hiking.
All right. Well, that was interesting. That was an interesting video. This came up in conversation with my brother back in January because he said he wants to do the 1 mile trail. The 1 mile trail goes from Curry Village to Glacier Point, but it is no longer maintained. And the reason it is no longer maintained is because so many people fell off of it that it was deemed unsafe. The thing is that with national parks, they are considered public lands. So it's not like the rangers are going to stop you from going in a certain area of the park. They're just no longer going to be responsible for it, right? So it's also called the Ledge Trail. Let me see if they got any pictures of this bullshit. One of the times that I was there in I think it was the aughts, we saw a massive landslide. It was a piece of the granite that came off that area and landed on the ledge trail, which is right above. I'm not going to look, I'm going to just tell you that it's there. I'm not going to read all this. Basically, there was a huge landslide that happened while we were walking from Curry Village to Lower Pines Campground. And much of that granite landed on that trail just above Staircase Falls. And the reality is it's not safe. And I think that the only people who could potentially accomplish that trail at this point would be rock climbers. You would absolutely have to go with equipment, with your, I'm not a rock climber. So all I know is from the stories that I've heard about like how they do their things, but you would have to have the appropriate gear to do it. But it's apparently an incredibly steep trail that starts at Curry Village. It's no longer advertised. It's had rock slides on it, and it goes right above, I think, right above Staircase Falls.